Okay, welcome everyone to Wednesday workshops. Feel free to start dropping all of your questions into the Q&A. We don't have too many right now. It looks like we've got one question that we're going to go over regarding fields, but you guys can go ahead and start dropping those questions into the Q&A and we'll get started. I'm going to go ahead and open to close here. So our first question that we have is, can you edit field names or do you need to delete, then create the new field? So it kind of depends. Typically, you can edit the names. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to click on our 3-line icon. I usually have this expanded when I'm going and taking a peek at the back end. We're going to go down to our hammer icon and we're going to head into our field editor. When we're talking about updating names, it depends on what you need to do with that field afterwards, right? So for example, I have this inspection contingency date. Maybe I need to change that. Inspection contingency isn't the verbiage that we use in my area. We actually prefer to call it the inspection period. And I need to track specifically the end date for that period. And so here I've updated the name. What I usually suggest is take that name, you can copy it. So you can use, Control C or Command C on your keyboard and then drop that name into the merge field. If you notice, it's going to automatically update that merge field to lowercase and it's going to pop in our underscores as well. Why do I suggest this? Because when we're taking a peek at our email templates or any place where it's bringing in that merge field, we want to know what that merge field is, right? So if we keep it to inspection contingency, we might get confused. But if we use the verbiage inspection period end date, we know what that is. And so it'll make it easier for us to know, oh, this is the merge field. I know which field it's trying to pull from. After we make this update to the name, we're going to scroll to the bottom. We're going to select I understand and update. This is for if you're just trying to make an update to the name, the function of that field is still required. So here we see that it's a date. It's always going to be a date. The moment that a field is created, it's going to hold on to whatever that field type is. It cannot be changed. So if you're just updating it, like you're like, hey, I want this to read this way, easy peasy, go ahead and update the name, select I understand and update. It's going to update that name for you. If you need to create a different version of that field, maybe the inspection period end date's good, and I'm going to go ahead and use my fancy Control F or Command F for those of you who are on a Mac and start to type in inspection. This just allows me to search the web page. And here I can see it'll show me anything with inspection. So if we just kind of go through this, it's going to take me down to our inspection section. And here we can see that we've got home inspection date. And then we have, another field that says home inspection scheduled. So here's that date. If we wanted to update that name of the date, we could. If we wanted to update, let's say, for example, the home inspection scheduled, we can see here that this one is a choice field. If we wanted to update the values on these, we can update the name of this. Yes, meow, meow. As long as I select update, then it's going to update as long as we see that option was successfully updated. So this is another way we can update some of those values. It just depends on what your use case is. Let me know if that answered your question. Feel free to drop in more follow-up one specifically for that. All righty. Our next question, how do I use different emails for different agents? So it depends on what you're asking for, Mags. If we're talking about adding, having a specific email send from, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take a look at what emails you currently have. So I'm going to head down to options to our gear icon, and then we can click right onto email addresses. Now in my account, you guys are going to see that I have quite a number of Google, a Microsoft, and then a non-API one. These Google emails here, this Hannah Hoxie at Open to Close, Hannah Hoxie at Workflow Boss, Hannah at Open to Close. These are aliases of this Hannah Hoxie at Open to Close right here at the top. So these two are the aliases that I have already built into my Hannah Hoxie at Open to Close. If you guys want to, I would definitely check out, the article regarding aliases. Let me see if I can pull that one up. How to create aliases in Google. Here we go. So how to create aliases for Google. I definitely suggest always going to Google Support's version. So here's Google Support's version. It explains what an alternate email is, what an alias is, and it kind of goes through these steps. I'll grab this and I'll throw it over to my co-host to drop in the chat for you guys. But that one, this could be a good example. If you're referring to different emails for different agents, as in like different emails for their contact themselves, you can technically have more than one version of that same contact. So here I've got a Pamela and a Pam Beasley. They're the same person, but they're different. Let's say here we needed to update that email to something differently. I would just make sure that we have some way of knowing that it's a different email, like possibly in Pam's name, it says Pamela for this one. So we know that the email is Pamela at Seed account versus, Pam at Beasley, which is Pam at Seed account. When we're talking about having them on the property, if you can see here that we've got this Pam on 5 properties, or Pamela on this 5 properties, and we've got this Pam on 32 different properties. So you could have it that, in case there's a different email for different people. This is especially helpful if, let's say, you guys are working with like an inspector, and they're super awesome. They do a ton of inspections for you guys. And then one day they're like, hey, I actually want to purchase a house. You might have a different contact or a different contact record for that inspector that's with their personal information. That way you can talk to them as if they're the buyer or the seller, whatever they end up being. So you can have more than one person in your system that has the same name, but that has different information. It just depends on how you want to build it up. Let me know if that makes sense. Do we have any follow-up questions for that? Let me see. It looks like we have one: add agent email to property. Are you referring to when we were talking about having the email here? So we can add on contacts. So here I can type on Pamela, and I can pull that Pamela onto here, or I can type in Pam and I can bring that person on here. When we type in that person's name, it's going to show us what email it's going to try to bring on. So this one's Pam at Pam. This one's Pam at Seed account. This one's Pam at Seed account as well. So when we're selecting the person here, this is where we're selecting them. And once we select them, I'll go ahead and select Pam. Here we can see that they already have a contact role added to them. We can always update that on the property to say, actually, they're the buyer's agent. They're not the appraisal in this case. Feel free, let me know if that makes sense. Feel free to drop in some more information on what exactly you were looking for as far as for emails. And I'll try to get through that. Can I add the agent signature to emails? It depends on what you guys would want to do with that. So you can have it that you have a specific email signature for each agent. So if we go down again to our settings icon and we head down into email signatures, you can have more than one email signature in here. We can call this, we'll call this Hannah's agent signature. So we'll call it SIG. And then we've got, and here it's asking me, okay, well, who do I want to assign it to? I'm not going to assign it to anyone at this time, but this is Hannah's, a Hannah Foxy. And we'll say that it's Hannah at agent.com, whatever that looks like for me. We'll say save. When we add on the next person, let's go ahead and add on Emily, agent signature. Add Emily's in here. Oh, I popped in an extra A. Emily, and we'll just do
I'm not sure if my computer's frozen.
Emily. Added in that A again. Okay.
We might have lost you there for a little bit, Hannah.
Am I back now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, guys. Here, let me see if I can refresh the page and see if that'll work. Okay, awesome. So once again, 3-line icon at the top, head down to our gear icon, head into signatures. So here we have these two signatures. We've got Hannah's signature. We've got Emily's signature. These are our pretend agent signatures. Emily at agent.com. So here is the example if you guys wanted to have those agent signatures in there. When we look at the property itself, I'm going to just go to Lexington Drive. and we go to our little drop down icon here, and we go into our defaults and settings. Here, we're going to scroll down until we see the email send from account and the default email signature. And here I can say, well, for this one, Emily's the agent. And so I want it to show Emily's agent signature. The signature can have more than just Emily's signature in it, right? We can copy paste Emily's signature in it. And then down below Emily's signature, we can add on the TC signature as well if we wanted to. It just depends on what your use case is, but you can have a ton of different email signatures on there. Here's where we're setting it on the property. That way, when we look at our emails, I'm just going to go ahead and head to emails. We can see here that we can also choose it from here if we want to, but our default from now on for any tasks or email triggers that are going to come through, it's going to show us Emily's signature because that's what I've set as the default email signature for this particular property. Alrighty. Next question. Can you go over the best way to create our users and groups the correct way? We currently have a group of agents and one TC who manages all files. So when we're talking about setting up, you're using the terms user and groups. I'm assuming you mean like teams and team members. Let's go ahead and head into our down here at our gear icon. We can go into organization and users from here. We can head over to our person icon and go to organization, or we can do Control O on your keyboard, and that's going to take us to our organization and users. Typically, if I have like one TC who takes care of the whole shebang in your guys' system, what I usually suggest is having one specific team. And the reason I say having one team is needed is because we really don't need more than one team if it's only one user. The only time we need multiples of teams is if there's going to be multiple users and we want those multiple users to only see their transactions. So as an example, in my system right now, if I go under team implementation, I only have implementation demo underneath here. If I click on Team Rory, here, I would probably want to delete implementation demo. And let's go ahead and do that. All I'm saying is that I want to reassign anything that's assigned to implementation demo from this particular team, and I want to have it changed to implementation demos team, and I'm going to remove him. So this is an example. If you had like Rory only needs to see what's assigned to Rory, they would need to be on their specific team. And if they're an implementation demo only needs to see what's assigned to implementation demo, they're on a specific team. Now, if it's just one TC user, then I would say have them on one team. You can call it team account, or you can call it main team, whatever you want to call it, and have that one user on there, have all of their roles that they would take care of assigned to them. And you can kind of leave it at that and have all agents grouped underneath there. It looks like we have another follow-up question. Can I see what they see? Are you referring to, can we see what the TC sees? If you have their login information, you're going to be able to log in as them. If you have more than one user, you're going to want to use this little impersonation button right here. And this is going to allow you to impersonate them and see, what do they see? Up at the top, what I want you guys to take notice is that I now have a red bar up here where that blue bar was. This red bar shows us that we're impersonating right now. So this is me impersonating. I'm viewing it from Rory's view. If I click on our impersonation buttons again, it's going to remove that impersonation. It's going to take us back into our profile. So this is one way you can do that. We've got another question. Actually, hold on. We've got a question about email addresses.
Yeah, because I think this is a good follow-up from Wes. Can you send them?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've got a follow-up question on email addresses. Can you send from multiple email addresses? Was that the first question I missed? No worries, Wesley. So the first question that we were talking about, we were just talking about, can I have different email signature or different email addresses in my system? And what I was saying was you could create an alias for that one, Gmail that you have connected. You could also have aliases for that Microsoft Outlook if you're using those. But here I have my main one, and then I have two aliases below that. When we're looking at the property, so I'm going to go to Colorado Springs. I think this one's, assigned to implementation demo. And we click on this little drop down and we go to the defaults and settings and we scroll down here where it says default send from email. This is pulling from my settings, but also if we click on this drop down, we can select a different email. We can only select emails that are associated with that user. So I'm not going to be able to select Rory's email and put it in here because this isn't a property that's assigned to Rory. This is assigned to implementation demo. So if you're one user account and you've got, a couple different aliases that are associated with that Google account that you have, you can definitely set the default on the property if it needs to be something different. Let's say for this one, I actually needed to say workflow boss. All I need to do is update that. Let's say I just wanted to have my first name, Hannah at open to close. I can update that, or I can select again, my Microsoft account, or I can select that non-API. And now that's the default send from email. Wesley, I see your hand raised. We do not allow unmuting on Wednesday workshops. So if you have a follow-up question, you're going to want to type that up and pop it into the chat. And we can go over it from there. Let me know if that makes sense. So technically you can send it as long as that email is associated with the profile, but we can't have it where, there's multiple different email addresses from one. Anything to add? Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So your one email, that would be whatever you connect underneath your apps and API. So here underneath Google, when you make that connection, it'll connect that email account when you connect that Google Workspace email account, or your Microsoft if you want to connect your Microsoft. And then you can always click on addresses to see what are the addresses that are available if you did have any aliases. And then this blue default button is what selects and says, okay, this one is the default email for all of those properties that are assigned to implementation demo. Awesome. We've got a great question here. How to set up agent portals or client portals. So for agent portals, we're going to want to head to our organization. So Control O, that's the fastest way I found to get to it. Here we're in our organization and user. Whenever you guys are inviting your agents, I want you to think of your agents as anyone who needs access to your intake forms. Okay. So agents are the ones who need those intake forms. We're going to click on user type. And we're going to click on agent portal user. So this is how we're determining what user type it is. Agent portal users right now are free. So you can have as many agent portal users as you need. Once you've gone through and you've filled out their first name, their last name, you've popped in their address, you've popped in a username for them, you've put in a password. Sometimes I'll usually put in something very simple that I can remember, like bubblegum, or like my favorite drink or something like that, like I don't know, mocha espresso or whatever. I try to make it simple because when we send out that invitation, it's going to ask them to reset their password. So you don't have to have anything crazy like a crazy set of numbers and letters here. Once that invitation's been sent, here's what it looks like. We're going to go to agents, and here we can see our two agents. I can impersonate them if I'd like to. I'm going to click on this little impersonation button, and it's going to take me to that agent's portal. Now I'm logged in as the agent portal. So once they've set it up, and there's some steps that they need to take when they get that invitation, it's going to ask them to enter in a phone number. That way they can receive a verification code. They're going to pop it in, and then that's basically the one and done. It's just to get that initial connection created. And then once they enter in their password, then they'll be able to get in. If they ever forget their password, they can still reset it by going to open to close. If they would go to login, which would not be a good example for me to show right now, because if I go to login, it's just going to open up my open to close. But they can go to login, and then there's a question that asks, like most login pages, that says forget password. You can click on forget password and they can reset it there. Here, though, once we're on the agent portal, there's a couple cool things that we can do. We can see what properties they have. We can see what context they have, what access to intake forms they have. If they want to share any APIs with you guys, they can share some APIs here. One thing I like to show about the APIs is that when you do submit this, all credentials are locked and encrypted. So try to keep that in mind when you send that in. It locks it, it encrypts it. That way, we're not going to be able to reopen up the follow-up boss integration or see that API information. It's just a one and done. So if you enter it in wrong, no worries. You can just delete by using this little trash can icon and add in your new credentials, or you can have that agent add in their new credentials, whatever that looks like for you guys. Last, they have the ability, if we had Stripe, they could pay for certain things for your guys' system. And then here, global settings, they can update their global settings if they'd like to as well. Now, you had a follow-up question. How do I set up my agents with intake forms? I want to cover that one first before we talk about client portals. So when we're talking about setting up our agents, we have a couple ways to set up the intake forms. We can, number one, go to agents, click on that agent's name, go to forms, and start selecting the forms from this list. When we add on these forms, I'm going to go ahead and just select the one that we created today. It's going to ask us to choose the team. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and say this is Rory. Let's go ahead and say the team user, it's going to be assigned to Rory. We're going to want to select our brokerage, and we're also going to want to select our time zone. So here I'm going to go ahead and say central. And what this will do is that when your agent fills it out, this intake form is automatically going to be assigned to Rory on Rory's team. You'll know what brokerage you're working with, and the time zone will already be set up for this particular agent. So that's the sort of the idea. You can set it up here. The other place we can set it up as, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of our organization users. I'm going to click on our 3-line icon. We're going to go down to our hammer icon. We're going to go into templates. We're going to go to our intake form templates. Once we're in our intake form templates, we're going to select edit on whatever intake form we want to check out. And then we're going to go underneath settings to assigned agents. Once we're under assigned agents, I can quickly search and add whatever agents I need to. So OTC, because both of them have OTC in their name. Here's that OTC agent. If I wanted to add on anyone else, I could. So if you have a long list of agents, let's say you just sent out a ton of invites and you're like, Hannah, I really don't want to click on each one of my agents and add on those forms. Go to the form that you need to add in all those people to and go through this step. This is a lot faster if you have multiple agents. Since I only have 2, it's a pretty quick thing for me to do. But if you have more than 2 or more than, I would say 5, definitely head to that intake form, search for that person, pop them on here, and then give them access the way they need to. So for this particular one, they only work with implementation demo. They're still in the same brokerage, and they're actually in Pacific Standard Time. So here's an example of how we could set it up on that intake form itself. Awesome. We have a next question. So this is a follow-up to the agent portal. How would those agents shared APIs be implemented and used? Great question, Wesley, or Wes, I should say. I don't know if your full name is Wesley. I'm going to head back into our organization and users. Once we get over to our agents, I'm going to go ahead and impersonate one of our agents again, just to go to where we're talking about for a moment. Once we're in this agent's profile, we can head down to our lock icon. If you guys are Follow-Up Boss users, when you set up your Follow-Up Boss account, you're going to have that, if you have a TC version of it, you're going to connect that to open to close, your TC account to open to close. Now, how do I get my agents Follow-Up Boss in there, Hannah? Because that's who I really want to sync with, right? I want my agents not to have to log into a ton of systems to see the information or see how a transaction's going. I want them to be able to log into Follow-Up Boss. They see it there. This is where they're sharing that Follow-Up Boss credential with you. And when we have that credential with us, I'm going to go ahead and unimpersonate this, and I'm going to head to a property. Let's go ahead and head to webinar. When we're looking at that property ourselves, so this is the TC looking at the property, making sure the information's pushing over correctly. We're going to go to our More tab. We're going to go to Follow-Up Boss. Once we're in Follow-Up Boss, here we can see Test OTC Agent and Implementation Demo. Implementation Demo is the one that's connected to our Implementation Demo account. Our Test OTC Agent is the integration that they shared with us through their profile. So this is how those APIs are shared across the board. It's the same exact thing for our .loop as well. They can give you access to their .loop account. They could also give you access to other types of information too. So if I click on more and we go to agent API key, maybe they want to give you access to, like, for example, here it says they're open to close. You would enter in your password and then they could reveal the username and password for you. So let's say you needed to go into a system that we don't integrate with, like Command. KW Command, if any of you guys are users of that system, maybe you need to go into that CRM. What you could do is you could have your agents share their login information with you, and you could use that login information. Really quickly, use the credentials, enter in my password, reveal the credentials, and then log into that other account that I need to get into. That's another way that these agent API keys are used. Let me see, was there any follow-up on that one? Cool. All right. Mags, you sent in, what did click on send to invite or to send invite? I think you're talking about underneath organization and users. Once you selected your user type, you're going to click create user, and then that's going to send the invitation out. I hope that was the question. Feel free to, if you need to tell me a little bit more about it, definitely feel free to tell me a little bit more about that. All right, OneSheet setup. Are you asking for how we set it up? Let's go ahead and head over to our templates. We can go to a property and we can create a OneSheet without a template if we'd like to. So we're just going to navigate to the property, select create OneSheet. We'll want to name it. We'll call this webinar 816, say submit. Here's an example of what it looks like. We can create it right on the property and say, let me look at the contacts. Here I selected contacts. Now I can select the contacts on here. Let's say I want to bring on all of our buyers and all of their personal information. And I want to bring on our title officer and their personal information. I don't want to bring on any tasks. We'll skip over that. I want to bring on the documents and I want to bring on the flag missing documents and flag fully executed documents. Go ahead and keep that. I don't want to bring on the property notes. I can pop in an email subject. I can pop in an email body if I'd like to send out an email with this. Something as simple. I would keep this really simple and straightforward as like, here's the information that you asked, or here's our weekly OneSheet update. Once you feel good about that, you can always go down to the bottom and say preview. It's going to pop open a new tab and it's going to show you what that looks like. You can also say download and it's going to download that as a PDF. So once I say save, we'll see here that it went to my downloads up here at the top. Looking at that preview here, we can see the contact information. So here's their information for the buyers. Here's their address, their emails. Here's the one for the title officer. Here's those documents that I said I wanted to come on, flagging the ones that are missing and showing the ones that are fully executed. That's got that FE next to it and it's in green. Might be a little bit hard to see, but it's that green color right here. So this is an example of what that OneSheet would look like. We can either have that, again, like I said, where we just create it here on the property if we need to create it one off. What I usually suggest, though, is we're going to head down into our hammer icon under templates. We're going to head down into templates. We're going to go down to where we see our OneSheet templates. And then I would suggest creating a template for it. This will make it a lot easier if you need to, really quickly add in like have a set number of fields that come on every single time, or a set number of like information for that weekly OneSheet update. We do have a template that was created by Open to Close. So this one's the OTC one. If you select edit on that, you can definitely edit it. Again, this is showing the fields that are going to come onto it. Shows the fields at the top. Here we can select through the different field sections if we wanted to see, let's share, what information or what we're handling for this particular person. We can also go to design and update the design or the logo for that OneSheet. When we go to layout, this is where we're determining what layout we want for the fields. And if we continue to scroll down, here we're choosing what contact roles we want to bring on, what the documents are. Do we want to bring on any tasks or property notes? We can also set up that email. So you can see here, this is very neutral. It's just saying, hello, attaches our weekly OneSheet update for property address. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Sincerely. And then that'll pull in that default email signature as long as we have this box checked here. Next, we can choose the recipients who we're sending it to. And then we can also set up that pre-schedule. If you want it OneSheet once a week, here we have that pre-schedule. Looks like we have a follow-up to the OneSheet question. Can a certain OneSheet be automatically applied to a task template? So no, OneSheets are added on as you create them. So you would want to create that OneSheet and then you would have it on. And the reason we have that is because all OneSheets most likely have a schedule already set with them and they're automatically ready to go out. We don't want it like the moment you create that OneSheet, and I'm going to go ahead and just say Hannah's WW 816. Let's go ahead and apply that OneSheet template that I had, right? This weekly OneSheet one right here. When I say apply, the main thing about this that we need to keep in mind is that technically this is going to go out automatically. It already has its schedule set up. I'm going to go back to OneSheets here. If we see schedule and send, if I click on that and we scroll down here, we can see that it goes out every Tuesday at 12 p.m. So we don't have OneSheets coming on with task templates. It's something that you're manually applying to the property. Once you have that set up, you know that it's sending to the correct people, you know that it's sharing the correct information. Then you can set the schedule, time, and delivery, and then it'll just do it automatically until you stop it, until you delete the scheduled amount. So that's how those are intended to work. Let me know if that makes sense. Awesome. Let me see if there's any other follow-up ones for that. No. Okay. Next question. What is the best way to add text to the intake form? Like if they check yes to home inspection being scheduled, what if we want them to enter information about when it's scheduled / with what inspector? Great question. So when we're talking about intake forms and we're saying, I need more information on the intake form while the agent is filling it out, we're talking about form conditions. So I'm going to go ahead and head into the intake form. So I'm going to go into my templates, head down to intake form. Here's my buyers and contract one. Let's go to that one first. Now for this one, I already have some form conditions built out. I'm going to go ahead and click on form conditions because I know that that question's already being asked. Is an inspection required? Here it is. We're going to go to form conditions and I'm going to use my Control F really quickly to look for inspections again, because that's the one that we're talking about. So here's that form condition. Inspection is an inspection required equal to yes. When we click on edit actions, this is showing us what's coming on next. So in this case, it's bringing on inspection contingency due dates. If I wanted to, I could bring on more fields. So here I could click on here fields. I could type inspection and maybe I have an inspection details response, or I have a, let me see if I have any fields for it. I don't know if I have any fields created in this account. Let's see if I have one in the specific inspection section. If not, we can totally create one today. Inspection details. We have this buyer's response to repairs. I don't think that would really help. If we're looking for more than just the due date for it, we'd want to create a field that has like a text area, a field with like text or text area. When we're talking about adding on like what inspector, if they've already selected their inspector, you can have them come on with the contact role. So here we can say inspector. If your agents have a set of home inspectors that they always recommend, we would want to set that up in a different area. But if this is like the agent, you know, they make the selection and then they fill out the intake form, we could say home inspector, we can say add. And now if that inspection is required is equal to yes, it's going to bring on that inspection contingency days, and it's going to bring on that home inspector. So your agent is going to be prompted to add in that home inspector. I'm not going to make it required though, right? Because not all the time are they going to have that inspector's information. If you know for sure that they're going to have it every single time, absolutely make it required. 100% pop that in there and make that required. That way you can get that information and get that part of the transaction rolling. Before I jump on to our next question, I am going to show how to create that field and then add it to this conditional logic. So I'm going to close out of here. And we're going to head back down to our hammer icon into field editor. We're going to locate the field section that we want to add it into. So I'm going to head down to our inspections, and then I'm going to add a field, and it's just going to be inspection details. Just going to try to keep it super sweet, nice and simple. Inspection details. For the field type, I can either say text, which is basically going to be like one line of information, or I could say text area, and it allows me to put in a longer description. So if you need, you know, some more information from that agent, maybe they usually like to say, oh, you know, this and this and this about the inspection, and we're going to do this and this and this, and this is some of the information about what we're comping or what we're taking care of or what they're paying or whatever information you need. I usually suggest doing a text area. So we'll add that in there. Once that's added in, it's going to add it to the very top. You can see that now this is created. We can see that this text area cannot be changed. So here we have the inspection details at the top. Let's go ahead and leave it there. Now that that's been created though, we're going to exit out of the field editor. We're going to head back to our templates, head back into our intake form, locate that buyer's intake form, select edit. We're going to go to our form conditions. I'm going to use that Control F feature again and look for inspections. Here we go. Here's our inspections. Click on edit action. And then now when we type in inspection details, if I can spell it correctly, details, here we are. I can say that I need that to come on as well. I can also make it required if I'd like to. The way that that looks on the property, we'll go ahead and say preview. Once this pops open, we're going to select our team. So I'm just going to pop in a couple people. We're going to scroll down. Here's our question. Is an inspection required? I'm going to say yes. Once I've said yes to that, we're going to continue to scroll down, and here we see underneath critical deadlines, here's that inspection contingency. If I continue to scroll down, here's those inspection details. And now your agent is going to be able to pop in those details. Let me know if you have any more follow-up questions on that. After you make conditions or changes to your conditional logic, always select cancel form once you're done testing it. You know, it looks good. We said, yes, it's popping in what we need. Now that we're good with it, we're going to select cancel form. That way we don't have that intake form caching and holding on to old information. Awesome. Let me see this next question. Do we need to have each agent link their follow-up boss if we want to import contacts from there and allow deals to show in theirs? Or if we all share a follow-up boss account with different users, will the main user just have to connect the follow-up boss account? So it kind of depends. Like I said, you can definitely have it that underneath your apps and API. This is how I currently have it, where I have my API key for follow-up boss. That is my main account, my master account there. And so anytime I make a connection or push information over from implementation demo account and open to close to follow-up boss, it does push it in to everyone and everyone can see it. The times when you would need their individual API keys underneath their profile, like as you know, logged in as the agent, I'm going to head back down to it. The main times that you're going to need to do this is if, let's say it's someone, let's say you're a TC business, right? And you don't necessarily have, you don't necessarily work with this team all the time. There's someone who contracts you for TC work. This might be a better way for them to share that information instead of you having to connect to theirs. And then what if you have to connect to a different follow-up boss account for a different agent? This is the better way to share that information across the board. So this is where we would want to share that information here. Let me know if that makes sense. Awesome. Perfect. No worries. Alrighty. Next question. My agent sent this to me. Why can't I use my intake form? I keep getting the error TZ1-1001. So what that means, we're going to go ahead and head to it. We'll head down to our hammer icon. We're going to go into templates. I'm actually going to recreate that error because I know how to get that error to come up. I'm going to create a new intake form. Buyer's intake form. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to select some fields. I'm going to say, we need to ask about this and this. Let me ask my intake questions. Let's ask these ones right here. Okay, now I'm going to preview it. Why isn't it working? The reason it's not working is we need to set a time zone for it. If we don't set a time zone for it, we're not going to be able to pull open that information. So this TZ1001, this error right here is just based off of the time zone. We can either click here to set it, or we can go down to our settings and we can select the default time zone here. So if I go to fields, click here, takes me to my settings. If I click on my settings, it takes me to my settings. We'll click on default time zone. Let's go ahead and just say it's Pacific Standard Time. We're going to go ahead and close out of that test dummy one that we had. When we select preview again, now it will open up that intake form. So it's just a matter of setting the time zone on that intake form. Cool. Let me see. Next question. Okay. Is there a way to change document button functions? Would be nice to have less colors to cycle through. For example, maybe you could explain what the different button colors are intended to mean. Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Wes. So I'm going to head into let's go ahead and head into the templates and take a look at them. So we're going into templates. We're going into document templates. We'll go ahead and click on Hannah's test. Here we've got some of those buttons. We're going to click on file buttons right here. You can also access the file buttons on the property itself, but if you're editing in the document templates, this is where we'd select our file buttons. Now, what do the colors mean, right? Because we've got green, we've got purple, we've got that clear color, we've got red. These colors were actually brought over because it was an ask when we initially created the document templates. It was color coding that is used in Skyslope. So it was something that we brought over because it was color coding that was used for a lot of our users that were using Skyslope. Can we reduce the numbers of color to cycle through? Not at this time. Not at this time. That's definitely a great request though. Please, like that would be really great to pop in as like a request for us to say like, hey, can we just have green and red? Green means that we're good, we have it. Red means that we're missing that particular document. Definitely feel free to submit that. Now, an example for these buttons are typically used if you're just trying to make sure that you have valid data entry. Okay. So it doesn't do any kind of integration. If we select, upload it to compliance, that UTC, it doesn't mean that it's going to upload it to compliance. If we say that it's approved by clients, that doesn't mean that it was, or it's going to do any, or it's going to fire off anything additional. It's specifically so that you can know what stage that document is at. Below that, if we look at the document buttons here, we're deciding, okay, well, what happens when we fully toggle on that, fully executed is toggle on? What colors do we want it to do? And do we want it to turn that missing label gray? And then if we turn it off, do we want them to go back to gray, or do we want them to go to red, or do we want that missing label turned to red? So this is where we're determining the colors for the buttons. This is pretty helpful for when you guys are kind of using it on the front end. And that's the reason why I mention it. So if we head over to our property, we'll go to our documents, we go down here. And for example, this one right here, you can see that these two are toggled on. Oh, this test 3, that's a fully executed button that's fully executed as well. So I can toggle that on, and now I can see the reflection of this being all green. If I toggle it off, you're going to see that those are going to change from green to gray, and that missing button is going to turn red. The other button that's red on here is our priority button. So this priority button right here is just saying that this is high priority and that we need to review it. This priority button also feeds into our health bar up at the top. That's why it's so red. If we scroll down on this list, we're going to see here that here is that particular test 3. We can either say it's low priority and refresh the screen. We could also select edit documents. It's going to take us to that document tab. And then here, if I wanted to remove the priority, it would just be a matter of selecting that priority again. So if we notice, we went from priority, we'll say high, it's red. If we select high again, it's going to turn gray, just in case if you wanted to say, hey, we got this document, we're good. Same thing with these ones. We got this document, it's good, kind of thing. Let me know if that makes sense, at least for those. Looks like we have a follow-up. Was looking for a functionality similar to the fully execute toggle, ability to create a toggle. I love the idea of being able to create a toggle too. Like both of those are great. Changing the colors, creating, doing the toggle. This is what I suggest. Head up to our little person icon up here and then head into our idea lab. You could search for ideas. So you could type in like file buttons and see if we have anything. Looks like we have one on here already, have set custom colors for file buttons. So here it looks like we have, if this works with you, or this works with what you were saying, you can definitely upvote this one. Otherwise, you can definitely submit a new idea and include as much verbiage as you want to. Show us a Loom video of whatever that idea is. All of that's really, really helpful for us, because that just kind of really tells us exactly what you want to use with it, how that new feature needs to be used, and so on and so forth. Looks like we got another question. Where does it pop in the contact role for the inspector? So if we're referring to the intake form, we'll head back over into that intake form. Here we're going to that intake form. I'm going to go into that intake form that we we're just editing. So that buyer's residential. Once we're on here and I go to the form conditions, I'm going to locate my inspection again. Here's our inspection. So here where it says dynamically adding contact roles, we're selecting the contact role from here. This is where it's popping in that contact role if we wanted to ask it on the intake form. If you want to add more contact roles to your system, we're going to head out of here. We're going to head down to our filters. So underneath hammer icon, filters. Once we're in filters, here's contact roles, and here are all the contact roles we currently have. You can always add in additional ones if you wanted to just say inspector across the board, or all inclusive inspector, or just inspector. You could type it in here and add it in. This little purple star here, if we have this selected, what that's going to do is it's going to allow that information to show in the agent portal and the client portal. Oh, I just remembered we talked about the client portal. We totally skipped over it. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the client portal. It's going to be a little bit hard for me to show you exactly what the client portal looks like, but let's talk about how you create one. If we head back to our organization and users, we can click on where it says portal roles. Portal roles is how we can add in different versions of client portal roles. So it doesn't just have to be a seller or a buyer. It can also be lenders. It can be title. It can be the broker owner, whoever you want to give access to a property, you can set up a role for them. I'm going to go ahead and click on buyer permissions so that I can kind of show you what's going to show up in that person's portal. So here, if you sent out this invitation to the buyer, this is the information that they'd see. They'd see the details, they'd see the documents, and they'd have the ability to download documents. And that's really it. If we click on buyers 2023, we can see that they have details to the timeline, and they can see the details of the property, and they can see contacts. They can see the documents, they can upload documents, and they can download documents. So we can give them more permission depending on who they are, what kind of information they need. If I click on lender, here we can see an example of lender's permissions. If I wanted to add on more permissions, I would just want to select them from this list here. So maybe for the lender, I want them to see the tasks, but only completed ones. So this is an example of adding it on there. If I wanted to remove it, I'm just going to click on that delete or that trash can icon. It's going to remove anything underneath this particular area. So tasks, completed, scheduled. Oh, I don't want scheduled to show. Let me delete that. But if I delete tasks, it's going to remove that completed option as well. Let me know if that makes sense. For the client portal, what I usually suggest is sending yourself an invite. Head to a test property, head over to our contacts. Here where it says portal invite, we're going to click on that. You're going to select what client portal role you want them to have and send that invite out. It's going to send it. I would usually suggest here for the email address, like send it to either a test email address, or for example, for me, I would probably want to do, Hannah Hoxie plus client portal buyer. And what this plus client portal buyer does is this allows you to create a different version of that same email. It's not going to create an alias necessarily, but it allows you to, especially if you're a Google user, it allows you to create an email address that'll still go into the same inbox, but it has that sort of that tag with it that lets you know that it like where this came from. I actually use this for like when I create Netflix subscriptions or like Hulu. I like to put plus Netflix plus Hulu. And I do that because this allows me to track where this email is being used and if it's being sold. Kind of allows you to keep on top of your information and how that's being used. But here you can have that. We can send that invite. Oh, I didn't choose a client role. Let me just go ahead and grab buyer. We'll say send invite. And if you notice, it's going to send that out, right? So from here, it'll go to my email. There are steps that I'll want to take, similar to how we do it for our agents, right? They're going to get that email. They're going to be able to prompt to create their account. They're going to be prompted to enter in a phone number. That way they can get a verification code and so on and so forth. Can you show me where it actually pops up on the intake form? Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and fill out an intake form. Let's go ahead and go to the one that I created, or the buyer's residential one. I want to say it was this one that we had that one come on. So I'm going to go ahead and select my team, select my user. I'm going to want to pop in an address. Now, for anyone who is testing out, you're just started with the system, you're kind of trying to see how things work and how things look. When we go through this step, the moment that we select save and continue, it uses one of your guys's trial properties. Keep that in mind when you guys are going through this. I would say go through and figure out what data is going to populate first, make sure all of that looks good, and then submit 1 to 2 intake forms to see what the rest of the information looks like. So here I'm just going to pop in my purchase amount. I'm going to say, no, there's not an appraisal. We'll go ahead and just pop in more details here. I'm going to say, yes, there's an inspection. We'll say, no, I just don't want to deal with too much coming onto this. Here we'll pop in our contract acceptance date. Earnest money, we'll go ahead and say it's on the 18th. Looks like we have to enter in a value as well. Here I'll say 17 for the inspection contingency. We'll say no HOA, no home warranty offered. This is a test. Once you get through filling out all the details, right, of that particular property, we're going to say save and continue. This counts as a transaction. This is creating that transaction. Once we get here, we're going to be asked to upload a document. So if I click on upload file, let's go ahead and grab a document that I have, upload that file. We'll say continue. And then here's where that contact is going to be added on here. So here's the home inspector. They came on because I said, yes, we have a home inspector. So, or we have an inspection. So yes, it brought that on here. And here I can select add, and I can either import from follow-up boss. If I have a follow-up boss connection, I can select a contact from my system already, or I can add in a new contact. Let me know if that makes sense. This is how we would want to get to that particular area. Like I said, if you guys are brand new and you're testing out things and you're trying to make sure your form conditions are filled out correctly, you do not need to say save and continue. You can just test out those form conditions and then say cancel form. That way you're not using too many of your trial accounts on just testing. And yeah, of course. Let me know if there's any other follow-up questions on that. Okay, next one. I can't see images in emails. This is the limitation of OTC or a setting I need to correct. It depends. I've done some tests with it as well. I noticed that we can like that sometimes they'll pull in if it's like through the signature, but the images themselves in here, it's kind of a hit or miss for me as well. So let me see. I'm going to just pop in like an image that I have. I think that this is a GIF. I'm going to go ahead and say save. So here's that GIF. It's on this particular email. Let me grab the agent email template review. We're going to say close on this. We'll head to a property. When I'm on this property, I'm going to head to emails and I'm just going to delete whatever email template's on this one. We're going to say apply template, pop this in and say apply. And we'll see if that email picture comes in. So it looks like the picture did come in. For this one, it might be a matter of where we're entering that image in. Now from here, obviously I'd want to test to see if it truly does come on and I'd probably want to send out this email. So let me just choose who to send it from and who to send it to. Go ahead and grab Hannah. So I'm sending it from a non-API. I'm sending it to Han Banan and I'm going to just send that out. And the reason I selected a non-API is because I know that my Gmail's been kind of funky and I need to refresh that connection. But here, if we go back over to sent, we can see what are the different emails that have been sent. I believe if I click on this one here, it shows me that email and it looks like the GIF is loading properly. So it looks good for here so far. Let me go ahead and check my email really quickly as well.
Oh, Hannah, also in received emails, we sort of follow up there. In received emails, can they see it?
In received emails, when you say received emails, are you referring to within open to close?
You're saying API synced emails?
API synced emails. Are you referring here when we sync the emails here?
Yes.
I would have to test it out myself just to see how that pulls in. Again, like I'm having some issues with my Google pulling in, but I'll follow up with you, Wes, after this. Because that's a really great question. I do see that image came in. So it does look like it pulls in if you add it into your email templates. If you say insert image, this is a GIF. So it pulled in correctly. So if you guys need to share that, you can. This is how it looks for me. So it does send images, but as far as for whether or not they'll show underneath API email synced, I'm not sure if it'll show up on the property. I do know that if you have your inbox connected and it's working, mine is not working right now, but if it was working here, this is a window into your Gmail. So if you had images in those, you should be able to see them. Now, whether or not you'll be able to download them or add them to the property is completely separate, right? We may be able to see the images or the documents that were sent over in an email. What we would want to do is when we're looking at that property, we have an option to either, CC our property email address to get those documents or images into open to close, especially if they're an attachment, or we would download those documents and upload them into open to close. Let me know if that makes sense. I know I kind of brought that out of nowhere, but that's one thing that's really important with it. Yeah, no worries. It's always good to ask. It's always good to ask because then it allows us to kind of test it out and see what we get, right? In this case, we were able to send it out, but as far as for, the synced emails, I would definitely have to check it out because, it's a little hard for me right now because it's mad because I don't have an email box to choose from, but we can definitely do some further testing and kind of see what the limitations of it are. We have kind of a follow-up. I think it says Skyslope documents. Is it possible to have uploaded documents attached to the appropriate Skyslope document placeholder, or does this have to be attached manually in Skyslope? I haven't been able to play with the Skyslope integration as much as I would like to. I want to say that when we have it push over from open to close into Skyslope, that you do have to manually do that within Skyslope. You have to do the manual sorting in Skyslope. after the fact, but I also know that it pulls in different checklists. So I'm not sure entirely what that looks like when we push it over. I'd want to do some testing before I could confidently answer that. I'd probably, when I follow up with you about the email, I'll investigate into that as well. And I'll kind of see what that looks like. If right now you're not seeing that it's doing that when you have that connection in Skyslope, then it's most likely not able to do that. Just FYI. All right, we have another question. What does intake form stack option mean? Awesome question. So first, I'm going to show you guys an intake form that we were playing with earlier today, heading into intake forms. I'll open up, where's our sellers one? Here it is. Got moved to the bottom. Here's our seller's intake form. If we edit that one and we say preview, what I want you guys to take notice when we're looking at it is that we have some questions here that are like this, where we have yes or no. We also have the question in a drop down here. We also have the option when we say yes, there is a loan, it brings on financing and it shows it's stacked. So what does intake form stacked option mean? When we say yes, we want it stacked, this is what that particular question looks like. Before we can get to that stacked option though, and I'm going to head back into open to close, head to our field editor. I'm going to head over to our intake questions. I'm going to scroll down to our buyer financing type, because that's the one we were looking at, buyer financing type. Here are all those options that we saw in on the question here. When we're taking a look at those rules, the first thing that we're going to need to do is say we want to see the radio buttons first. So we'll say yes, and then we'll say yes, intake forms, stack options, yes. And that's how we get this look. The other example that I showed you guys earlier was do you have property access? And it's a drop down, right? Oh, thank you, Wes, for joining. Definitely, hopefully we'll see you next week on our group onboarding sessions. So heading back into the field editor, if we head back over to that, do you have property access information? Here's that question right here. What I want you guys to take notice is that right now it says no, do not display radio button options. If I change this to yes, and I say I understand, and I say update, when we refresh this intake form and we scroll down to where that option is, now we can see that it has these radio buttons. If we change that answer once again, we go to access and we change it from intake form stacked options to yes instead of no, I understand an update. If I refresh the page again and we scroll down, now you'll see that it says yes or no stacked like this. So that's the sort of difference between like, okay, do we want to have it as a drop down that we select? Do we want to have it as, side by side like these guys, or do we want to have it stacked? Anytime you have 3 questions, 2 or more answers that would be answered for this, I definitely suggest using that stacked one. When we have them side by side, you can see here that there's a little bit of clipping happening. It says yes or no, cash deal, and deal is underneath cash. It's because this text area is very, very short. So I would rather you guys have it like listed out like this instead of have it clipping to show you guys what that looks like, because it doesn't break anything. It just looks a little silly. We'll go ahead and update that and we'll show you what that looks like for the buyer's financing type. So if it looks like this and you're like, ooh, Hannah, I don't like that, we're going to want to make sure to navigate to that field in the field editor and update that stacked to yes, say I understand, and update. And that's going to change the way that field looks. Ta-da! Awesome. Lots of awesome questions today. We're at the last 3 minutes. Feel free to drop in your last questions if you have any. Cool. We've got one more. Where do I find my billing information? So we're going to head over to our little person icon up here at the top. We can either click on plan and billing. You can also click on profile, and then you could head to billing here. Here's your billing account. It'll show you which plan you're on. Here you can see how many trials you have left. You can also cancel your account. You can also see what cards are on file for it. You can see what invoices you have and how much you've paid for that particular account. Awesome, guys. So like always, let's go ahead and go over a couple things within open to close. If you guys are looking for more webinars like this, but maybe more direct learning, you can always head to opentoclose.com, click on our learn tab, head to webinars. Here we have our list of webinars. Today, we went over intake forms and property templates. Next week on Tuesday, we're going to be going over Fields 101. And on Wednesday, we're going to be going over emails, text, and messaging 101. These are great calls for if you're just getting started and you want to know how to edit, customize, use your system. If you guys are looking for support or help, we have our little chat icon down here at the bottom. You can send us a message. This is a chat with us. You can have conversations with us and we can kind of help you out from there. You can also reach out to us at help@opentoclose.com. If you're looking for any articles, we're going to head to our little person icon and go to Support Center. It's going to pop on open our Support Center. And here we can type in some of the stuff that we looked today. So I'm going to type in agent portal, press enter. And now I have some more information on how to set up my agent portal, contacts for agent portal. What does it look like on that intake form and all the other things that have to do with agent portal. So if I need to look up more. Other than that, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Lots of really great questions. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next week.